Welcome to the Chasing Goalpost podcast, our first one of 2025. First and foremost, Happy New Year to all our listeners out there in the audience. And as you can probably tell, we've got a local celebrity here again, Randy Barker, my co-host, and obviously my name is Dustin Cosgrove. Today we're going to talk about how to maximize our goals in 2025. Now, Randy, as you can imagine, it's the new year and everybody's thinking about how they maximize the year for themselves. And so as New Year's resolution season begins, goals are going to be top of mind for a lot of people, I assume.
Yeah, first and foremost, Happy New Year to you too, Dustin, and to all the listeners. And yeah, this is the time of the year that people set those goals for the new year. It was funny. I was looking at some research today and just looking at New Year resolutions, and actually, they were saying that over 90% of people don't complete those, which was kind of mind blowing to me. Yet at the same time, not. I mean, I think part of when we talk about goal setting, we'll be talking today, is there is a science, there is theory behind this, and really making sure that we're taking the right steps to give us the best opportunity to reach those goals.
So 1 in 10 people fall through in their goals. So let's flip that on its end and say, let's go 9 out of 10 people are going to accomplish their goals after they watch this episode. So
love it.
Well, let's jump in here. So maybe first and foremost, before we get too deep into this, let's just kind of baseline here. Why are goals so important, Randy?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, goals, I think, really give us direction, right? It's a roadmap to getting us to where we want to be. I mean, I think it's no different than if we're going on a journey or we're going on vacation or we're traveling. I mean, part of it is we, we want to have the steps that we have in place to get us to where we want to go. I think the other thing is, as humans, I think we have this intrinsic motivation to strive towards something. And so I think that when we really look at it, those are really two important points. Number one, we want to be able to kind of, have the direction that we want to go. And part of it, again, is being human, is striving towards something and working towards something.
So let's put ourselves in the audience's shoes. We're sitting down here and we're looking at creating some goals for ourselves for the year 2025. What are the goal setting frameworks that you would recommend and why?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good frameworks out there when it comes to goal setting. There's two that I tend to always go towards, and I'm sure one of them a lot of your listeners have probably heard before, but I kind of like to put a little bit of spin on it. And that's, a lot of people have heard about SMART goals. I like smarter goals. And what that stands for is that S really means specific, right? Describing your goals in a vivid detail so you can see it clearly. That M stands for measurable. Determine how you can measure it and making sure that you're seeing the progress as you go along. Attainable, making sure that it's realistic, it's within your skill set. I think a lot of times people set unrealistic goals, which then it goes back to that 1 in 10 that complete them. Then again, it has to be realistic. That's what R stands for. And then T stands for time bound, is really breaking your goals into these increments of 1 week, 1 month. And then the last two, so that's that SMART, SMART. The last two that people, don't talk about, but really I kind of like to put that twist on, is the E is exciting. Right? Making sure that the goals excite you. It's something that you're passionate about, which is obviously going to help you accomplish it. And the last thing is, does it resonate? Does it resonate with your values? Right? Is it something that you value and want to work towards? So I think that's a framework that I think works very well for people. Lots of people use it. Again, I like to add those last two, the exciting and resonate, when we look at goals. The other one that I tend to use a lot, it's called WHOOP. And it's actually been used a lot in positive psychology. And the W stands for wish, right? Something in your life that you desire. So that's what you're looking for. O is the outcome, right? What would it look like and feel like if you were to achieve this? I think the next part is again, where people sometimes miss when they're looking at goals. And the next part is obstacles, right? Is what would it feel like to face those obstacles when it comes to it? I mean, we are going to face those obstacles when it's goals, when it comes to goals. A lot of people don't plan for that. So the first time they run up into an obstacle, they don't know what to do. They haven't, planned for that. And that's when things start to go awry. And that last part is plan, right? And plan is, you use those statements, the when and the then statements to create a plan to overcome them. So you're planning, knowing that there is going to be obstacles in place, and you have a plan to make sure that you're overcoming those. So I think an example of WHOOP, if we were to use an example, for instance, the wish would be to achieve a healthier work-life balance, right? So that would be the wish. The outcome would be just better mental health and family time. So that would be an outcome. The obstacles would be those endless to-do lists, right? And then the plan would make a habit of delegating one task, every day. So again, that's just an example of how we could run through WHOOP when it comes to goal setting.
So smarter. So I've heard of SMART goals, but the smarter, right? The excitement and the resonate piece. So add the ER to the end of SMART goals. And then the second one is WHOOP. And WHOOP, as I'm following you, it's WOOP.
Correct.
So as you think about those frameworks, and you think about people sitting down and jotting their goals down in the first, let's call it typically first 2 weeks or first month of January, kind of what the time frame we are now. But then so many people fall off. So why do so many people stop after a few weeks or months?
Well, I think there's a few things. Number one, I'll kind of go back to what I mentioned, is that the obstacle component, there are going to be times that things become difficult. And if you haven't planned that, then that can be much more difficult. The other thing is I don't think people are realistic with their goals. I always like to say is making sure that you're setting yourself up for success, right? In meaning that, it needs to be realistic in the sense of, I always look at the process as making sure that day by day you're gonna taste that little bit of success, because when you do that, you're more inclined to do more of that over and over again. So I really believe success early on is really important with goals. I think the other thing is not all goals should be the same for people. I think it needs to be very individualized. So if both me and you say, yes, we're going to the gym, it may be different depending on where we are in our life, some of the things that are going on, what is realistic, and what are we striving for. So I think that's really, really important. And you have heard me talk about this before, Dustin, is kind of those tiny habits, right? Of starting small and working our way up, lowering the bar in the sense of making sure that we're tasting that success. That's really where habits are formed, and that's really what we're striving here if we want to reach those goals.
That's great. You kind of took the words right out of my mouth there, because my next question was, what are some goal setting tips that you feel can make a difference and help more of that 90% that typically fail succeed?
Well, I mean, I think there's a few. Number one is writing them down. Like a lot of times people don't even get to the step of taking the time and writing them down on paper. And what we do know is that people, and research has shown this, is that people that actually take the time to write them down are more likely to accomplish them. I'd even go a step further, is to even tell someone in your support system of your goals, right? So even saying them out loud, that changes things. Once we've said them or we've told someone else about our goals, we're more likely to accomplish those. Not only that, but if we have that support system, we have that other person that will be helping us along the way, or motivating or checking in with us, making sure that we're accountable to things too, in a positive way.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. I mean, recently I've been doing some research, listening to some podcasts myself, and they were talking about outcome-based goals versus action-based goals. And I thought that was really intriguing. The outcome-based goals is, I want to go and lose 30 pounds and have a six pack. The action-based goals was, I'm going to move my body every single day. And I think you've said this on a previous podcast. And so I just thought that was really intriguing. I mean, do you get into that a whole lot in your line of work when you talk about action based goals versus outcome based goals?
Absolutely. I do a lot of work with performers and athletes and people. And I think this is a tricky part is outcome rated goals. It is all about the results. And part of what happens is if that's all we focus on and we don't look after the things that we could do on a daily basis, things start to become problematic. So I always look at it as, from my perspective, and the research would show, is it's really about those action goals, the things that you can do on a daily basis, the process, things that you have within your control. I always say, as you look after those, the results will look after themselves. And that's really difficult for people because we always want to focus on the outcomes or the results. But I always say is some of that we don't have control over. What we do have control over is today, doing the things that we need to do to give us the best opportunity to get there.
Appreciate the feedback on that. And so the other piece that I had been looking into or listening to recently, and it just kind of piqued my interest, was this thing about the dopamine reward system and how, in my mind, the dopamine reward system really essentially supports the action based goals. Can you maybe walk us through what the dopamine reward system
Yeah.
is?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, dopamine is a reward chemical that the brain sends out when we accomplish something rewarding, right? So it dumps into our body. It's that feel good feeling, which then is self reinforcing. It allows us, and we're more likely to do more of it because of that, right? So not only does it feel good, but then it again, it increases the chance that we're going to continue to do that. And it's going to increase our motivation, which again is we're going to need along the way to continue. So, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we need to be aware of when it comes to the science is that dopamine does play a role when we're talking about goals. We want to have that little hit of, oh, that feels good, knowing that again, that reward is going to keep us coming back, doing it over and over again.
It was funny you bring that up, and when I listened to that, it resonated because this is probably 2 decades ago. But when I was an intern at a bank back home, at the end of every week on Friday mornings, I would grab a Starbucks, right? And so you make it through the week, you get to Friday. It was like almost like a celebratory, like, hey, you made it through another week, solid job. And I didn't really even realize at the time what I was doing, but essentially that became somewhat of a dopamine reward system that I was looking forward to every single week.
Absolutely. So just even the anticipation of reaching that or accomplishing something, that dopamine is being released.
So let's jump into a example here, Randy, because I think this will be interesting for the audience. So let's call our fictitious character here Jim. So let's assume Jim's 40 years old and he wants to create a $12,000 horizontal income stream that will, number one, near term support his active income, and two, longer term will support his or supplement his retirement income later on in his life. So that's the outcome based goal, right? Jim wants to create that $12,000 horizontal income. But the action goals that Jim has to do in the meantime are that he needs to save $1,000 a month. So those little tiny habits that you talked about, paying yourself first along the way, is going to be a part of that for Jim. Probably $250 a week or $500 bi-weekly, right? So it gives Jim $1,000 per month, so $12,000 a year that Jim has to save, and then Jim has to invest that money consistently in an 8% yielding investment vehicle. So let's assume Jim's been watching the Chasing Goalpost podcast and he knows where to find that 8% yielding vehicle, right? Now, this is interesting. If Jim does this consistently for 10 years with compounding in play and time on his side, 10 years later, he's 50 years old, he will have achieved that $12,000 horizontal income stream. So you can just imagine that outcome based goal is 10 years out, all those little dopamine reward systems that he's going to have along the way, tiny habits that he's going to have to pick up, the consistency. But the crazy thing about this, Randy, and this is where this gets really, really fun, in my opinion, if Jim keeps this up for 25 years, so the first 10 plus another 15, 25 years, and changes nothing about his approach, he will have developed a $100,000 annual horizontal income stream that will pay him for the remainder of his life from 65 on. That's pretty impressive. And I just wanted to share that as an example for the group, because a lot of our goals tend to be either money based or obviously health based. And so that's just an example, but it does take time and it does take effort.
Absolutely. I think that is just a great example of the differences between those and the impact that it has on those action related goals and steps on a daily basis and what that can equate to.
No, I think it's great. And listen, thanks again for all the feedback today. I think this is an important episode, especially to kick off the new year here in 2025. And for all the listeners out there, obviously good luck in creating your goals. Randy, is there anything else that you want to kind of bring up before we conclude the episode here?
Well, I think with the goals, again, making sure that you're using those frameworks. I think it's really good to make sure which one resonates most with you. Write them down, share them. And again, I can't I can't reinforce enough action, right? It's not just focusing on the results, it's the things that you do on a daily basis that are really going to make a difference.
Randy, it's been a pleasure here, my friend. First episode of 2025. Look forward to many more. And thanks again for all the insight.
Well, thank you, Dustin.